Get this trash out of here before she embarrasses us all. Victoria Ashford, the blonde woman in a deep red evening gown, her voice cold as steel, tightened her grip on Zara Williams's arm and shoved hard. Zara, a young black woman with a slender frame, staggered backward, her simple black dress snagging on the champagne table, sending glasses clinking together. Whispers rippled across the chandelier-lit grand hall of the Metropolitan Museum. Immediately, Preston Ashford, the son, dressed in a glossy tuxedo with his phone already raised, hit record. The lens zoomed in on Zara's flustered face. "This is going straight to TikTok," he sneered. "Poor girl thinks she belongs here." Zara froze, drawing a deep breath to steady herself. For a few seconds, the entire room seemed suspended in silence before laughter erupted. Camilla Ashford, the sister with more than 20,000 Instagram followers, snatched the invitation card from Zara's hand. Holding it up like a trophy, she shouted, "Look, everyone, someone's playing dress-up with a fake ticket." And with a triumphant grin, she tore the card in half. The sound of paper ripping echoed through the cavernous room, dropping the atmosphere into sudden silence. Shreds scattered onto the marble floor, glittering under the lights like shards of damning evidence. Two security guards moved closer, their expressions hesitant, awaiting orders. The Ashfords quickly formed a circle around Zara, each phone lifted high, recording every humiliating second. Over 200 of New York's elite, business moguls, artists, politicians, turned their eyes toward the scene, watching the free entertainment. Zara bent down, her hands trembling as she picked up each fragment of her ticket, the scraps lying across the floor like the remains of an invisible sentence. Victoria's smile sharpened as she stepped forward, her tone theatrical. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a gate crasher situation tonight. Some people simply don't understand the meaning of exclusive." Preston switched to live stream mode, his voice crisp like a show host. "Guys, you're witnessing peak delusion right here. This is what happens when someone from nowhere tries to crash a $10,000 a plate gala." His viewer count shot from 15,000 to 20,000. Not to be outdone, Camilla launched her own Instagram Live, whispering into her camera, "This is actually painful to watch. Secondhand embarrassment is killing me right now." Her viewers skyrocketed to 28,000, hearts flooding the screen. Meanwhile, Zara continued to gather the pieces. The act wasn't humiliation, it was patience, an eerie calm. Her loose black hair fell across her face, but her eyes held no tears. From across the room, James Patterson, head of museum security, approached with the museum's director, Dr. Elizabeth Harper, her face etched with worry. James spoke politely, softly, "Ma'am, I need to verify your invitation status for tonight's event." Victoria cut him off, laughter dripping with disdain. "James, darling, the evidence is on the floor. A fake invitation, probably printed at some Kinko's in Queens." She waved dismissively, her gaze sweeping the crowd like she was directing a stage play. The crowd pressed closer, forming a closed circle. Glittering gowns and tailored tuxedos became walls of judgment. Phone flashes flickered like predator eyes in the dark. Zara calmly rose, clutching the scraps, and placed her hands neatly together. Her voice steady, she said, "I understand there's been some confusion about my presence here tonight." Camilla scoffed, thrusting her camera closer. "Confusion? Girl, there's no confusion. You don't belong here. This isn't some community center fundraiser." Comments exploded on Instagram. "Kick her out." So cringe. Poor girl doesn't realize where she is. Within the crowd, a few began shaking their heads. A renowned doctor whispered to her husband, "This doesn't feel right. They're being unnecessarily cruel." But Victoria spun back, her smile razor sharp. "Sarah, surely you understand the importance of maintaining standards." The tension climbed with every breath. Preston raised his voice for the live stream. "Sometimes reality hits hard, people. Not everyone gets to live the dream." His TikTok view count surged past 50,000. Still, Zara stood in silence, the torn paper clenched in her hand, her gaze unwavering. She did not scream, argue, or flee. She simply held her ground. And that silence unsettled the very people filming her downfall. Some in the crowd whispered, "Why hasn't security removed her yet? This is getting uncomfortable. Someone should call this into page 6. The air was taut, stretched to its limit, and there, at the center of it all, Zara gripped the scraps tighter, lifting her head. Her eyes were deep, steady, as if she already knew this battle was far from over. The marble hall tightened like a velvet noose. Phones kept flashing. An artificial sky of cold eyes. James Patterson stopped in front of Zara, his voice still holding a trace of respect. "Ma'am, if you have another form of identification, I can verify it privately to avoid further trouble." Victoria cut him off, her smile sharp as a blade. "No, James, publicly. Someone who fakes their way into a 10,000-a-plate gala must learn their lesson publicly." She half-turned, raising her voice so the entire hall could hear. "We cannot allow just anyone to slip through and contaminate the air of an exclusive event." Camilla adjusted her camera to catch the best light on her mother's red gown, adding commentary for her live stream. "Security still isn't doing anything. Honestly, this is embarrassing. Do you see those shoes? Discount Palace, I swear." The comments surged. "Kick her out. Why is she still standing there?" "Zoom in." Zara steadied her breath. She laid the shredded ticket pieces flat in her palm, arranging them carefully, like piecing together a painting. She didn't look at the cameras nor at Victoria, but straight at James Patterson. "I understand, you're just doing your job," she said, calm but clear, "and I don't want to turn this into a powder keg." From the crowd, Dr. Sarah Washington leaned toward her husband, whispering, "They're going too far." On the left aisle, Judge Catherine Morrison tilted her head, eyes sharp, as if recording invisible notes for a moral trial. At the back, an older businessman who had been filming from the start stayed steady, his expression heavy, as though he had seen this kind of power play many times before. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, museum director, carried her tablet, scanning through the sponsorship list. Williams Foundation, platinum sponsor, $100,000, table assigned. Patterson caught her eye, and she nodded, but Richard Ashford interjected. "That name could have been stolen. I've worked at corporate security. Identity fraud is everywhere." A phone rang loudly, breaking the tension. Richard glanced at the screen. Marcus Williams. Urgent. He frowned and hit decline, swatting it away like a fly. Preston caught the moment, panning his camera. "Folks, this is real life. Keep the illusion until it shatters." Peak cringe. Views surged past 75,000, comments flooding. "Why hasn't she been dragged out yet?" "Security covering up." "This is why we need barriers." Zara pulled a small phone from her clutch. The screen lit up. "Dad, emergency. Answer now." 17 missed calls. She paused, finger hovering, then pressed decline. Those nearby noticed, laughter rippling. "See? She's acting." Victoria pounced. "Even her calls are disruptive. This is no place for rudeness." Patterson stammered, "Ma'am, we'll escort you to another room to verify." "No." Victoria cut him short, clapping twice like closing a scene. Here, in front of everyone. No private rooms for frauds. The pressure in the room shifted. Some who had enjoyed the spectacle now looked uneasy. A woman whispered to her friend, "We came to donate, not to hunt." But the tide still pulled forward, the social media feeds roaring outside. Camilla tagged a string of New York influencers. Some literally rushed in, phones raised. A young reporter, press badge swinging, went live. "I'm at the Met Museum, where a possible intruder is causing an unprecedented scene." Zara lifted her head. Her eyes showed no anger, only a strange stillness, like a lake before a storm. She spoke slowly. "If the goal here is transparency, I'll make sure you all get a clear version." She turned, letting her voice echo across the hall, then opened her speed dial. "Let's settle this properly, shall we?" Victoria sneered. "Perfect. Call in your rescuer." Preston zoomed closer, whispering into his mic, "Plot twist incoming." The phone rang once, twice. Zara lifted it to her ear. "Hi, Dad. I'm still at the Met Museum. Before I come home, there's something you need to hear about what the Ashford family really thinks of our community." The marble acoustics made each word crack like a gavel. Some gasped. Dr. Harper lowered her tablet, eyes wide. Judge Morrison froze mid-step. The older businessman stopped breathing for a beat. Richard pulled his hand from his pocket, staring at Zara's phone like he'd just seen a ghost step out of the fog. Zara didn't lower her voice. "I'm standing here with Victoria, Preston, Richard, and Camilla Ashford. I thought you'd want to hear firsthand how they treat someone when they believe no one important is watching." Dr. Harper's fingers flew over the tablet, scrolling from Williams Foundation to Williams Tech Corporation. Two words burned bright on the screen. Marcus Williams. She whispered under her breath, "Oh my God." The whispers around the room shifted tone. From mocking chuckles, the air turned into a sea of questions. Marcus Williams? The CEO of Williams Tech. He's her father. Camilla instinctively lowered her phone. Preston stuttered, losing frames on his live stream. Victoria tried to hold her gracious smile, but her jawline tightened like a lock. Zara tilted her head, her voice calm, almost icy. "Yes, Dad. They tore up our foundation's invitation, called me trash, demanded security drag me out. Live streamed it all to tens of thousands." Silence fell like a black hole, and from within that silence fear began to take shape. Palpable, heavy, and spreading. The great doors of the grand hall swung open, a rush of cool night air sweeping in with the echo of deliberate footsteps. Marcus Williams entered. Charcoal Tom Ford suit, minimalist tie, eyes as heavy as a month-long closed-door session. Two aides trailed close behind, followed by a lawyer carrying a slim case of files. The whispers died instantly, as though someone had turned a switch. "Good evening." He didn't need to raise his voice. The deep register carried cleanly across the hall. "Zara, are you all right?" She nodded slightly. "I'm fine, Dad. Just received some education." Marcus turned toward the Ashford family. Richard swallowed hard. Preston leaned against a pillar, hands trembling so badly the phone shook. Camilla drew her shoulders in, wishing she could disappear. Victoria held on to her polite smile, though her clenched hands were bloodless white. Dr. Harper hurried forward, voice breaking. "Mr. Williams, I am deeply, deeply sorry for what just happened. The museum takes responsibility." Marcus lifted his hand, not rudely, but with finality. "Doctor, your institution is responsible for its own response." Their behavior, he nodded toward the Ashfords, belongs to their values. He fixed Richard with a direct stare. Let's talk numbers, shall we, Richard? Accumulated debt, $1.2 billion. Stock price, down 73% year-to-date. Last quarter loss, $89 million. Without a strategic partner, Ashford Industries has about 67 days before declaring bankruptcy. With the $850 million joint venture, you projected break-even in 18 months. He paused for a beat. Projected, in the past tense. A dry gasp rippled through the crowd. Richard opened his mouth, but no sound emerged. Victoria inhaled, about to speak some note of charitable virtue, then shut her lips, as if swallowing glass. Marcus's lawyer opened the file. We have collected 37 recordings from 17 camera angles. Preston Ashford, 4 TikTok videos tonight, total views 347,000 and climbing. Camilla Ashford, 37 minutes of Instagram Live, 43,000 viewers. Mrs. Victoria Ashford, captured tearing the invitation, physically shoving the victim, instructing security to remove trash from civilized society. The final words landed like a verdict. Preston stammered, I was just joking. You turned humiliation into public entertainment, the lawyer said, snapping the file shut. And now it is evidence. Richard folded his hands. Marcus, please hear me out. This was a misunderstanding. We didn't know who she was. Marcus cut him off, voice low and cold. You didn't mistake her identity. You chose your values. Saw a black woman in a simple dress and decided she didn't belong here. Zara stepped forward half a pace, her tone softer. Dad, I have a proposal. She turned to the hall, once an arena, now a tribunal, and looked straight into the phones. If the Ashfords truly want change, I want them to issue a public apology to everyone who witnessed tonight. Implement mandatory unconscious bias training for the entire leadership and board. Dedicate a $10 million fund to anti-discrimination organizations, and submit to quarterly diversity audits by an independent body. Results made public. The whispers surged again, but differently, no longer glee, but shock. Judge Morrison spoke aloud, slow. That is a standard accountability framework. Dr. Washington added, and the bare minimum to repair the harm. Marcus looked at his daughter, then at Richard. If you refuse, then use your 67 days left to explain to your employees why their livelihoods collapsed because your board couldn't treat a black woman with basic respect. Richard turned to his family. Preston bowed his head. Camilla pressed her lips tight, tears breaking loose. Victoria met Zara's eyes, giving the slightest nod, her first without mockery that night. Richard drew a long breath. We accept all of it. Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced. Board emergency meeting moved to 10 p.m. He looked up. My board meeting is now delayed until 10 a.m. tomorrow. You have 18 hours to begin proving these words are not performance. He paused on the marble steps, turning back once more. And Richard, the joint venture terms will be quarterly benchmarks. A provisional deal renewed only on evidence of transformation. Fail, and it ends. A wave rolled through the hall, not applause, not jeers, but the collective exhale of witnesses. Preston, by reflex, was still live streaming. The comments flipped tone. This is accountability. Legendary turn. 800 miles can't buy dignity. Time to pay tuition. Zara turned to James Patterson. Thank you for not dragging me out in front of everyone. He nodded, face heavy. I was wrong not to intervene sooner. People err when they think there are no consequences, Zara said, voice steady. But there's also redemption when they choose responsibility. Above, the chandelier glinted on the torn ticket in her hand. Once a symbol of humiliation, now a milestone of a new contract. Justice doesn't wear an evening gown, but it steps firmly across cold stone floors. And as the doors closed behind Marcus and Zara, tonight's spectacle ceased to be online fodder. It became the blueprint for the next 18 hours, and for the quarterly reckonings that would decide the fate of an empire. 6 months had passed since the marble hall exploded under the chandeliers. The Metropolitan Museum, once the stage for a young woman's public humiliation, now glowed with a completely different atmosphere. A banner hung above the entrance. Williams-Ashford Corporate Responsibility Summit. Instead of glittering gowns and diamonds, the room was filled with round tables marked with nameplates. Diversity consultant, civil rights advocate, CEO, student scholarship recipient. There was no mocking laughter, only the low hum of thoughtful conversations, the rustle of notes, and the steady rhythm of handshakes opening a new era. Elizabeth Harper, the museum's director, stood at the podium. 6 months ago, her face had been taut with fear when she saw the name Marcus Williams on her tablet screen. Today, her voice was steady. 6 months ago, this hall witnessed an event that could have destroyed the reputations of both individuals and corporations. But instead of an ending, it became the starting point of irreversible change. In the front row sat the Ashford family, transformed. Victoria wore a simple navy dress instead of her diamond chains. She held a notebook, scribbling attentively. Preston had his phone on the table, not for TikTok entertainment, but displaying a list of interview questions for HBCU students in a new scholarship program. Camilla, once flaunting luxury on Instagram, now reviewed drafts for her weekly Privilege Check series, shared with 200,000 new followers. Richard Ashford took the stage. His face bore the marks of 6 months of struggle, but his voice carried a steadier weight. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to share some numbers. 6 months ago, our diversity statistics were these. Only 3% of leadership were people of color, 12% women in executive roles, and 0% minority-owned suppliers among our key partners. Today, 31% minority leadership, 47% women executives, and 35% of suppliers are minority-owned businesses. Behind him, the screen showed portraits. Marcus Johnson, once a warehouse supervisor, now a regional manager. Maria Santos, a logistics engineer whose idea saved the company $2.3 million annually. Dr. James Brooks, head of R&D, recently awarded the company's most important patent in 5 years. The hall listened in silence. They weren't just hearing numbers, they were hearing proof. A company once haunted by prejudice was reviving by opening doors. Victoria rose. She trembled slightly as she approached the microphone, a far cry from the woman who once commanded the Met Museum Hall. I want to face the truth. 6 months ago, I tore up a legitimate invitation, called a young woman trash, and tried to turn her humiliation into a so-called lesson. Today, I know that was raw prejudice. She displayed a slideshow, herself in a Harlem soup kitchen, apron on, working alongside elderly women. She pointed to one. This is Sarah Martinez, 67, a former housekeeper. She taught me that dignity isn't measured by labels. This is Michael Williams, 34, a software engineer. He taught me that intelligence doesn't depend on a zip code or skin color. Preston continued. My video that night reached 2.8 million views. At first, I wanted to disappear, but then I thought, fine. Let people see what privilege and bias look like when you think no one important is watching. And now I've turned my TikTok into an education platform on bias. 847,000 views for last week's video. 1.2 million for my HBCU student interview the week before. The comments now aren't mocking. They're, you made me look at myself. Camilla followed, her gaze steady. I lost 89,000 followers, but what I gained is greater. I now have a community of 200,000 people who believe in equity. My Instagram no longer flaunts Birkin bags. It raises scholarship funds, shares essays on equality, and partners with civil rights organizations. Marcus Williams stepped forward, his voice resonant yet firm. People ask, why not destroy the Ashfords instead of giving them a chance? Because destruction is easy. Rehabilitation is hard, and only rehabilitation creates lasting change for everyone. The screen shifted to new data. The Williams-Ashford partnership in the past 6 months had generated $1.2 billion in revenue, created 2,400 new jobs, 67% filled by people from minority communities. The applause that thundered through the hall wasn't only for financial success, but for a deeper truth. When real change happens, profit and justice are not opposites. That night did not dissolve like any other gala. After the grand doors closed behind Marcus and Zara, the Met Museum felt strangely hollow, the clink of glasses being cleared, the weary footsteps of staff, the mingled scent of floor cleaner and expensive perfume still lingering in the air. But inside the discreet private rooms, a series of storms had just begun. In the East VIP room, Richard Ashford sat ramrod straight, barking orders. Alan, meeting now. Lupin Lena and legal. General Counsel Alan Pierce appeared with an uncharged laptop. CFO Lena Brooks joined remotely, her voice hoarse. We're facing a liquidity crisis, Richard. 67 days is not a metaphor. Richard gripped his pen like an anchor. Priority 1, wired $10 million into escrow for the Anti-Discrimination Fund by 8 a.m. Priority 2, sign a binding agreement with an independent diversity auditor tonight. I want names and signatures on paper. Priority 3, public apology at 7 a.m., no deflections, no excuses. In the women's restroom, cool light reflected Victoria's face. She pressed both palms against the sink as if holding herself steady. I called her trash, she rehearsed in the mirror, throat raw like swallowing sand. The door opened. Zara entered, black coat draped over her shoulders, eyes calm. They stared at each other for a long beat. Victoria tried, I am sorry. Zara nodded, not forgiveness, not punishment, just acknowledgement of truth. If you're going to apologize, she said quietly, say exactly what you did. No ifs, no buts. And add this, I was wrong because I thought no one important was watching. Victoria shut her eyes. I will say it. Down a hallway corner, Preston curled on a chair, phone vibrating nonstop. Emails from brands. Terminate effective immediately. He opened TikTok, instinctively starting a clarification video. I was just joking, I didn't know who she was, but stopped midway. The trial clip looked so disingenuous even he despised it. A message popped up. Camilla. They canceled all affiliate deals. I have to delete my live. Preston typed back. Don't delete. Keep it. We'll face it. A new bubble. Marcus Williams' legal team. Please preserve all recordings. Preston leaned his head back against the chair, feeling for the first time in his life that he was doing the only thing he couldn't edit, letting the truth stand still. In the director's office, Dr. Elizabeth Harper set down her tablet, looking at James Patterson. We failed procedurally, she said, voice heavy. Tonight, the policy of private handling was twisted by the crowd and sponsor pressure into public spectacle. James, eyes red, replied, I let them drag me into public enforcement because of donor influence. Harper exhaled. From now, new rule. All ID verifications must be in private rooms with legal oversight. No phone circles permitted. I'll issue it before dawn. She opened a file, institutional response, draft. and began typing the museum's formal apology. In the West Conference Room, Marcus laid out the framework documents. Beside him, aide Audrey Cole distributed packets, quarterly values alignment review, probationary framework. This, Marcus told Richard as he entered, is what you just accepted in front of the entire hall tonight. Now we make it concrete. Audrey flipped pages. Quarterly diversity targets, independent audit mechanism, minority supplier review, transparent promotion criteria, point of accountability, an independently appointed chief diversity officer. Nominee, Dr. Angela Rodriguez, currently VP at Williams Tech, seconded for 6 months. Richard skimmed, sweat soaking the leather cover. "I'll sign," he rasped, glancing at Victoria at the door, her eyes swollen. "We must sign." Near midnight, hashtags, Shias Met Museum, Cher Ashford Gate, House Dignity, Not for Sale shot to the top of trending. Headlines screamed, Ashford family humiliates billionaire's daughter, 850 metamers deal on the brink. Camilla's phone rang non-stop, her manager scheduling talks with civil rights groups, compensation for those she exploited for clout. The Manhattan Moms group chat fell eerily silent. She went live, hands trembling, screen showing only a single line on black. "I harmed someone. I will say her name. Zara Williams." Then she ended it, choosing silence over content for the first time. 03:15 a.m. Internal email from Ashford Industries. This morning 7, main lobby, public statement. 7:30, sign probationary framework with Williams Tech. 8 Hacker Tem escrow activation. 9 Hacker town hall with full company. 10 Hacker working session with Dr. Rodriguez. Lena Brooks CC'd all VPs. Cut PR spin budgets. We cannot buy back dignity. We must earn it. Our session 40. Sidewalk outside Ashford HQ was packed with reporters. Judge Catherine Morrison and Dr. Sarah Washington arrived, uninvited but understood, essential witnesses. James Patterson handed his incident report to Ashford Legal, Zyseed Harper. A simple but healthy act, putting truth on paper. 07:02. Richard spoke first, barehanded, voice raspy from sleeplessness. "Last night, my family harmed an innocent woman, Miss Zara Williams, through words and systematic humiliation. We were wrong in our judgment, wrong in our use of power, and wrong in turning cruelty into spectacle." He stepped down. Victoria took the mic, breath audible. "I called her trash. I tore her invitation. I demanded public removal. I did all of that. I apologized to Zara Williams and to everyone who witnessed and was hurt. No ifs, no buts." She swallowed hard. "Today, we begin paying tuition for an $850 million lesson, with action." 07:31. 20th floor boardroom. Marcus placed his pen on the first page of the probationary agreement. Richard signed beside it, shaky but firm. Audrey time-stamped it. Dr. Angela Rodriguez shook hands all around. First note of a hard song, "It will be uncomfortable, and we will see it through." Dr. Seu Washington added, "I will stand as witness if you turn back." Judge Morrison, "And if needed, I will remind everyone that justice doesn't forget history." 08:05. Bank confirmation arrived. $10 million escrow active. The notice flashed on the big screen like a first fire put out. Preston stepped into the hall, set his phone at eye level, no filter, no soundtrack. "My name is Preston Ashford. I filmed and mocked a woman, Zara Williams. I was wrong. This is the only video tonight I hope you screen record. No slogans, just one promise. I'll use my channel to relearn, first. Aero 9, Rose, internal town hall. Hundreds of employees filled the hall, faces a mix of anger, fear, tentative hope. Richard said plainly, "If you see us repeat such behavior, report directly to Dr. Rodriguez. Do not go through me. Anonymous whistleblower line goes live today. In the front, warehouse manager Marcus Johnson raised his hand. How many people of color will be guaranteed advancement opportunities this quarter? The question was not soft, but necessary. Dr. Rodriguez smiled. We'll start with 3 target numbers, and next week I'll publish them on the intranet. No empty promises. 10:12. In a side room off the lobby, Marcus and Zara sat together. Are you all right? Yes, Zara answered, eyes on the torn invitation pieces she still carried. She laid them out on the table, shaping them into a small arch. I'll keep these, not to remember pain, she said, but to measure change. No, Marcus nodded. He knew tonight had pushed a dynasty to the brink. The rest would be guided by discipline. Outside, the sun climbed over the city's glass towers. The dramatic night was over, but the first 18 hours of probation had passed like a breathing exercise. No miracles, no shortcuts. Only the memory of humiliation as a giant mirror, and signatures binding words to obligations. From here, quarter by quarter, the numbers would have to speak louder than promises. And if arrogance ever returned, the same phones that once filmed humiliation would be raised again. This time to record accountability. New York City woke to an uncanny silence around Ashford Industries. Every morning, paper carried the same front-page image. Victoria Ashford, in a plain navy dress, head bowed at the public apology, with a headline beneath, "The 850 million lesson, Can the Ashford Family Change?" But the headlines were only the surface. Inside, a real storm was tearing through the corporation. The first board meeting since the scandal unfolded like a piano wire pulled to breaking point. The 30th floor blazed with light, but every face was pale. At the head of the room stood Dr. Angela Rodriguez, sharp, composed, her slides glowing red with damning numbers. This is the current state of Ashford Industries, she declared, voice firm, unyielding. 3% of leadership are people of color. 12% of executive roles are held by women. 0 minority-owned suppliers among the top 30 strategic partners. If this doesn't change by next quarter, it will be the first evidence to void the joint venture. The room went dead quiet. Preston sat at the back. Fingers twisted tight, sweat soaking his shirt. He knew. This time there was no joking, no entertainment clips. Every eye cut toward him like knives. Camilla scribbled furiously, lips pressed thin, head bowed low. Richard sat in the center, looking a decade older. Victoria, hair pulled neatly back, wrote every word down, as though copying her own indictment. The days that followed became an unrelenting gauntlet. In the first executive training session, a giant screen replayed the old videos. Preston sneering at Zara as delusional, Victoria ripping up her invitation. The room was silent as the instructor's voice cut in. This is prejudice disguised as entertainment. How many times in this very company have you laughed at employees in the same way, without a camera rolling? Preston stood, throat tight. He drew a deep breath and forced the words out. I thought I had the right to laugh at others. But the truth is, I was only exposing my own cowardice. His confession hung heavy in the air. No applause, but many eyes welled with tears. Meanwhile, Camilla was tasked with rewriting the company's entire communications strategy. She sat for hours before a blank screen, but instead of thinking about handbags or labels, she picked up the phone and called frontline employees directly. How do you feel working at Ashford? A simple question she had never dared to ask. One worker hesitated, then answered, We feel invisible, but if you're calling today, maybe it's a signal. Camilla wept, not for lost followers, but for the truths she had ignored for too long. Externally, the media firestorm raged. Every Ashford action was under a magnifying glass. A coalition of social investment funds began tracking the company, framing it as a test case for corporate redemption. Meanwhile, old investors fled, stock prices plunged. But Richard had no escape. In one meeting, he said bluntly, "We are no longer an empire. We are defendants on probation, and every decision from here must prove we deserve to exist." A month later, for the first time in its history, Ashford Industries appointed Marcus Johnson, a black warehouse manager, to regional director. Employees across the building rose to their feet in applause. The clapping thundered through the halls like a new wind carrying hope. Maria Santos, a Latina logistics engineer, presented her $2.3 million cost-saving plan, and this time it wasn't dismissed. Richard shook her hand personally. "I'm sorry I didn't listen sooner." At night, Victoria sat alone, replaying the old clip. Her voice snarled from the screen, "Remove the trash." She switched it off, pressed her hands over her face, her breath ragged. In her journal she wrote, "I will turn this shame into a lesson, not just for me, but for those who come after." And the next morning she appeared at a Harlem soup kitchen, serving food for homeless children. When someone recognized her, asking, "Aren't you the woman who—" Victoria nodded without flinching. "Yes, that was me, and that is why I'm standing here." On the 90th morning since the Met Museum night, the steel and glass tower of Ashford Industries looked like a fortress under siege. Outside, dozens of reporters, TV vans, cameras, and protest placards crowded the sidewalks. A group of students raised banners. "No justice, no business." Activists chanted, "850 million can't buy silence." Everyone was waiting for the first quarterly review between Ashford and Williams Tech, a public trial without a judge, but with millions of witnesses. Inside the 30th floor boardroom, the air was thick. The long, polished table, rows of leather chairs, and a giant screen displayed the words "Quarterly Review, Probationary Agreement." Richard Ashford sat at the center, fingers clasped tight, his face carved with new lines of exhaustion. To his right, Victoria, in a simple dress, eyes red from sleepless nights. Preston sat slightly behind, phone on the table but screen dark, a silent confession. Camilla clutched her notebook, scribbling short lines. No pardon, only probation. The door opened. Marcus Williams entered, tall, resolute, eyes unwavering. Beside him was Zara, in a minimalist black dress, holding a clear case that preserved the torn fragments of the invitation from that night. The sight froze the room. For many, Zara herself had become a living emblem, proof that justice could begin with one person's silence, waiting for the right moment to speak. Dr. Angela Rodriguez, the diversity auditor, launched her slides. Her voice was steady, clinical. In the past 3 months, Ashford Industries has raised minority leadership to 31%, women in executive positions to 47%, and 35% of core suppliers are now minority-owned businesses. The $10 million fund has been dispersed into 27 grants for civil rights groups and scholarships for students of color. These are concrete outcomes of the reform mandate. The clatter of reporters' keyboards filled the silence like soft rainfall. Richard exhaled. At least the numbers hadn't betrayed him. But Marcus remained silent, face stern. He closed the folder and let his voice resonate. "You've started, but remember, this is not absolution. This is a suspended sentence. And it will be weighed again, quarter by quarter." Zara rose, her gaze sweeping the room. She did not raise her voice, yet every word cut clear. Change is not measured by slides or metrics. It is measured by how you treat employees on the factory floor, customers without luxury suits, communities you once dismissed. The day ordinary people in this company can walk into this room without fear, that is the day you will have truly changed. A wave of silence rippled across the chamber. Board members stared down at the table, avoiding her eyes. Preston picked up his phone, but not to mock. He aimed it directly at Zara, speaking to nearly 1 million TikTok viewers live. Listen to her. This is what we should have heard the very first night. Comments poured in like a flood. This is the truth. Save this. Change begins with listening. Camilla didn't lift her head, but tears smudged the words on her page. Victoria folded her hands, giving a faint nod, a silent admission. Richard turned to Zara, voice cracked. Thank you for saying what we didn't dare face. Then, unexpectedly, applause erupted. Not from Marcus, nor the powerful figures at the table, but from the employees invited to witness. The clapping spread, strong and relentless, echoing through the hall. They weren't applauding numbers, but truth spoken aloud. For the first time in years, their voices felt like they could reach the 30th floor. Marcus stood, resting a hand on his daughter's shoulder. You made them confront the truth, and that is the real beginning. Zara smiled faintly, eyes resolute, fingers brushing the laminated shards of her torn invitation. She knew those scraps would forever serve as witnesses, a reminder that power can collapse in a single night, but dignity, once held firm, becomes the foundation of a movement. When the meeting adjourned, the press surged in the hallway, flashes blinding. A reporter shouted, "Zara, do you believe Ashford has truly changed?" Zara paused, turned back, her voice calm. They're beginning. And sometimes beginning matters more than perfection. That answer became the next morning's headline. The beginning. Message from the girl once called trash. New York shimmered under golden lights as night fell. But inside the Met Museum, the marble hall that had once witnessed Zara's humiliation 2 years earlier now pulsed with an entirely different atmosphere. No mocking laughter, no phones raised to record disgrace. Only hundreds of business leaders, scholars, and social activists gathered for the Metropolitan Accord, the largest corporate responsibility summit of the decade. Marcus Williams took the stage. Silver streaks in his hair, but his voice still warm and commanding, his eyes glowing with pride. 2 years ago, right here, a powerful family thought they could humiliate a young woman for her clothes and her skin color. They didn't know that the torn fragments of that invitation would become the cornerstone of a global movement for change. Thunderous applause followed, not only for the reminder, but because everyone understood, humiliation can be transformed into strength. In the front row, the Ashford family sat with entirely new bearing. Victoria, no longer in diamond-studded gowns, wore a simple navy suit with a small civil rights pin on her lapel. Once the epicenter of public outrage, she had since spent 2 years traveling through poor communities, volunteering to teach skills, and facing thousands of people who once looked at her with scorn. She had turned her own shame into a teaching tool. Her memoir, The 850 Million Lesson, Learning to See My Own Privilege, had become required reading in 47 business and ethics programs. Next to her sat Preston, stripped of the sneering bravado of the young man who once weaponized TikTok. He opened his laptop and projected clips from his new channel, Privilege Check. The videos, interviews with HBCU students about career barriers, had millions of views. One comment glowed on the screen. You're using your mistake to teach the next generation, and that is value. Preston lifted his head, voice calm. Back then, I filmed to mock. Now I film to learn alongside others. Mistakes don't vanish, but they can become lessons. Camilla followed, face radiant, holding the mic with steady hands. I once live-streamed to turn a woman's humiliation into amusement. Today, nearly 1 million people follow my account for conversations about social justice, inequality, and truths I once ignored. I lost the ones who craved luxury, but I found a community that craves change. Zara sat midway in the audience, gaze steady on the stage, fingers in her pocket, brushing something familiar, the laminated fragments of her torn invitation. When she rose to speak, the hall erupted in a standing ovation. No longer the awkward girl in a Target dress, before them stood Zara Williams, Vice President of Williams Tech, an emblem of the global corporate responsibility movement. Her voice rang out, low but powerful. I was once called trash, had my invitation torn, and stood in a circle of jeers from hundreds. But tonight, this hall bears witness to a different truth. 47 companies have signed commitments to change. Dozens of universities have adopted new curricula, and thousands of employees have, for the first time, been given fair paths to promotion. This proves change doesn't start with miracles. It starts with the courage to face the truth. Applause roared like the sea. Marcus watched his daughter, pride shimmering in his eyes. He whispered to the person beside him, "She turned pain into a movement. That is true leadership." After the summit, Victoria quietly approached Zara. They stood face to face, no longer separated by the gulf of 2 years past. Victoria's voice trembled. "I will never erase that night, but I will spend the rest of my life ensuring it never happens again. Not just to me, but to anyone within my reach." Zara looked at her, nodded, and answered with words Victoria would never forget. "It's not about what the past did, it's about what you choose to do now." As Zara exited, reporters swarmed, flashes exploding. One shouted, "Zara, do you believe the world has truly changed?" She paused, her eyes bright but her voice calm. Change is never complete. It is a journey, and this journey has only just begun. The next morning, headlines blazed across the globe. From humiliation to global movement, Zara Williams and the $850 million lesson. Her photo spread everywhere, a serene smile, holding the laminated shards of her torn invitation, like a reminder to the world. Sometimes humiliation is not an ending, but the beginning of an era of justice. And so, what began as a night meant to break a young woman instead ignited a global movement that reshaped an industry. From torn scraps of paper, Zara proved that dignity cannot be denied, and that the darkest moments can open the path toward justice and hope. What about you? If you were in Zara's place that night, would you stay silent under humiliation, or stand tall and let the truth speak for itself? If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss the next inspiring and dramatic story.